Hey guys, Aussie Expat here on the Aussie Expat 2 channel. We're not talking about watches, it's just me talking to you. My watch channel is in the link down below, that's a separate channel now. Today I'm going over a topic, renting versus buying. Not so much investment advice, but maybe some of it is. So one of the things to think about is that emotions are part of the market. You can either be a victim to them or you can recognize what's happening and see whether or not you can come ahead. In general, following the pack is not a great way of beating the market, but sometimes following the pack is still fruitful. It's not a bad outcome sometimes. An example of this is like, say, buying S&P 500 ETFs. Not super exciting, but it works. And you know what? Most people who have purchased a house have made value out of doing so. What we're really debating when we're talking about those scenarios, and including renting versus buying, is which was the more optimal strategy. So we're talking about not whether or not you lose out completely, although that can happen sometimes. It's really more about opportunity cost. Could you have been in a better position if you had made different decisions? I think the biggest thing to think about when you're talking about mortgage versus buying is not so much the investment aspect, but one, your enjoyment, as well as how it affects your thinking. So in terms of enjoyment, in your early 20s, it may sound like a great idea to get involved in, get a single family home and get on that investment train and, get along, get on the train, get on the ladder, quote unquote, and do that. However, I think in your early 20s, you don't actually want a single family home. You're probably more like I was, in line with doing something like apartment living, where it's absolutely cheaper, like the money out of your pocket's a little better, and you get to live a lifestyle that you actually want to in your 20s, which is, maybe in the middle of downtown, you go out, friends, bars and stuff like that, and you don't really care about having a large dwelling at home to fill with shit. So that's a lifestyle aspect. The other aspect is if you've got a career, and so Aussie Expat, I've been an engineer since leaving university. A lot of careers benefit from moving to where the work is. If you're in a field where there's a lot of value in quote unquote being world class or being where the work is, then being able to move with that whenever the opportunity arises is an important factor in your overall earning capacity and ultimately, financial outcome. The other aspect is also overbuying. Typically, like if you're in your 20s or something like that you don't need a single family home at all. So you'd almost guarantee overbuying in that situation. That's never a good thing. But then when you get older, the apartment living isn't going to be actually attractive. So you do want to get into a single family home. So either way, you should be careful in mind about exactly why you want to be in the dwelling that you're in. You should take seriously the things that contribute to your lifestyle and not just try and make the best financial decision, quote unquote. Because as I said, if you're young, having flexibility is important, renting is going to be important. But you know what, thankfully, renting is almost always cheaper than buying. Like, I have never encountered a situation or place where I would have had more money in my pocket to do other things with, namely investing, not just splurging, if I had purchased instead of rented. And there's a lot of things in my life that I couldn't have done with respect to my career and what I've gotten around to around the world if I'd chosen to get a mortgage and just have to pay the bills every month. There were 2 years where I was literally homeless, where I just kept on going from one hotel to the next with my fiance at the time in Southeast Asia, and that was a lot of fun. If I had a mortgage, I would have had to worried about maybe getting a tenant for my place and still paying taxes and stuff like that. And ultimately those outcomes, they affect your decision making. The reality is, as someone who gets a mortgage, they're just gonna stay. It doesn't matter what opportunities present them or how awkward the setup is. Most people do not get up and move once they have their mortgage locked in. I've got countless friends for who this is true for. So for me right now, single family home, renting versus buying, it's certainly out of pocket cheaper to rent than buy still, especially with the new interest rates. However, one thing that I've noticed in my Austin trip, I recently tried to scout for getting a better house, and I realized one of the things that has happened is I have had a little bit of lifestyle inflation. I want a better house than I have currently. And to me, that means more modern, better layout. I mean, as an example, I think our house is about 2,400 square feet, and even though 2,400 square feet is big, I think one bedroom is completely just storage. The casita, which is another master bedroom and bathroom, that's never used. And then the formal dining area, which is actually probably 500 square feet, is also completely disused. So like half of the house is actually literally not used, even with a family of 4. So a house that actually had a much better layout, so no formal dining area, more entertainment space, less bedrooms, this would actually make a lot of sense. So there are modern setups that are like that, so they would be a benefit, a step up. But I see these in the new build range of $1.1 million out here. Now in Seattle, $1.1 million buys you a shithole. Out here in Vegas, it buys you one of the nicest places, one of the nicest areas of town. And I like the look of it. So a mortgage for such a place would be about $6,000, $6,500. And so I said, could I get that just by renting? So I went on Zillow and looked for rentals that are asking for more than $5,000 a month. And the reality is like there was only 2 listings. And then my friend said, hey, try Scottsdale, Arizona, tons of great houses out there. And I tried Scottsdale and there was literally 1 listing. And out of these 3 listings, none of them were actually good. They were just overpriced listings. They weren't actually delivering that $1.1 million really nice house, nice look type of experience. It was just overpriced. So I'm in a position now where what I want due to lifestyle inflation, now you should try to combat that, I'll come back to that. Due to lifestyle inflation, I want something that isn't even on the rental market. They're just at this higher level, it just doesn't seem to exist. And I can understand that. Typically anyone able to afford, say, above $3,000 in rent could easily just have bought a home that was a little bit more modest. So yeah, I'm in a position where I think it actually might be the only way to get the house that I want. The consensus is right now that housing prices will decline and that it's not a good time to buy. That's probably true. This being said, house prices may not decline. They may just stay flat, and with inflation going at about 8+%, it'll just erode the value anyway. The other aspect I've thought about is I've always looked at the attractiveness of a loan and an interest rate as being the difference between the interest rate and the inflation rate. And while 3% is an absolutely low interest rate, inflation at the time was also very, very low, which also means that the actual effective interest rate was like, say, 2%, with inflation at 1%, 3% being your rate. So your effective rate is like 2%. Even though the absolute number causes certain people to reel right now, most people to reel right now in terms of affordability, so 5-something% versus 3%, the inflation rate is now 8+%, meaning the effective rate to me is actually negative. So it's a much better rate, actually. Now this obviously makes assumptions that inflation is static and it won't be. It'll come down maybe, but who knows? Maybe we just live in, for the next 5-10 years, inflation is just above 8% for the next 10 years. Is it possible? Can we live like that? Yeah, it can happen. I mean, the reality is that the money supply doubled in the space of 1 year. To account for that doubling, you'd need to have an inflation rate of about 9% for the next 10 years to make good on that doubling of the dollar. So it could happen, the fundamentals are there. So yeah, the last thing I want to point out is that this is really just lifestyle inflation, and I could live in a house the same as we have here for a long time and be happy. And if I purchase a house that is much nicer, is it really going to be nice in 10 years, or will I just see it the same as the house that we have here? Am I really just committing to having multi-$100,000 renovations every 10 years? Or is it the case that people just have to flip out of older homes into newer homes all the time, and it's just an ongoing increasing cost? Okay, well, that's my Sad Day Thoughts video. Please like and comment down below, and until next time, see you around.